Oral question, Baroness Pigeon.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, resolving the long-standing problems and missed opportunities of micro-mobility, including e-scooters, is a priority for my department, and we will work with colleagues across government to tackle this as soon as possible. We also recognise the need to ensure dockless cycle, including e-cycle rental schemes, work for the whole community. That's why we announced plans in the English Devolution White Paper on Monday to empower local leaders to regulate these schemes.
My Lords, I welcome the White Paper with the promise to allow local regulation of micromobility schemes. However, the public continues to buy e-scooters which are illegal on public highways and may not be built to the highest safety specifications. So when will the government bring forward urgent legislation on the use of personal e-scooters covering safety issues, including batteries?
So I absolutely respect the view of the noble Baroness. As of December 2023, circa 1 million people aged 16 or over owned an e-scooter in England. In July 2020, e-scooter rental trials were set up to inform future regulation, and in May 2022, the last government announced primary legislation to legalise and regulate them. This was not delivered, meaning e-scooters are still, as she says, or implies, illegal to use outside of the e-scooter trials, which are due to run until May 2026, which is why I said that it is a priority for my department, and we will move to tackle this as soon as possible.
My Lords, some agencies like the Essex Road Safety Partnership have 2 or 3 week blitzes in which community volunteers and the police combine to stop illegal e-scooter drivers. But this enforcement's piecemeal and only partially effective. When will the government spread this neighbourhood crackdown on illegal scooters across the country?
The government is committed to a crime and policing bill. I was discussing it with my noble friend Lord Hanston Flint just before questions, which will look at the plight of local communities being plagued by antisocial behaviour, and that bill intends to give the police stronger powers to stop vehicles being used to bring misery to our neighbourhoods, with officers no longer required to issue a warning before seizing them. That will allow them to swiftly deal with off-road bike nuisance in public parks and dangerous e-scooters on pavements, as well as street racing and cruising.
Lords, in Spain, they've started a scheme to actually identify e-scooters who are driving too fast and while not wearing hats, and they've introduced a €100 fine on the spot. Is that something we should consider?
I have with me a summary of the way in which 22 European countries have dealt with e-scooters, and one of the most striking things about this summary is that there is no consistency across Europe and across the other countries surveyed about how to deal with this. One of the challenges of the legislation opportunity that we will take is to work out what's best for this country. There are all sorts of different changes. There are all sorts of variations, minimum ages, whether or not you can ride them on pavements, whether or not you need mandatory helmets. 1 or 2 countries have registration schemes. That seems as hard with e-scooters as it will be, as it might be with bicycles, and we will have to work through what the best scheme is for this country in order to put forward the appropriate legislation.
My Lords, the noble Lord the Minister referred to a trial conducted by the previous government, which has gone on rather a long time, rather too long in my view. Would it not make sense for the government to draw that trial now to an early conclusion and see what lessons could be learnt from it before proceeding with legislation, so that it could be informed by the results of the trial? Will the noble Lord the Minister be able to give a commitment that that will actually be done? And when he does learn the lessons of that, will he take a particular interest in the use of mobile scooters in relation to crime, which we see on the street, which is a cause of great concern, not least mobile phone theft?
And happy Christmas to you, Lord Moylan. Gosh, that's a distraction. Of course, there is a criminal aspect to the use of e-scooters, particularly illegally, and that's why legislation needs to be brought forward to regularise this. So far as the trials go, I think it's implausible to suggest that we will curtail them, simply because actually they are the only e-scooters used on the public roads which are legal. But I do agree with him that we should be learning the lessons as quickly as we can. And I think that learning the lessons of the trials that we've had, which have been going on, as he would recognise, for 5.5 years, and also understanding what's gone on in the rest of Europe and in developed countries will help us bring forward the right legislation for the United Kingdom.
My Lords, with reports of deaths on the pavements from e-bikes and e-scooters, there's a lot of worry about safety, and particularly for those who are disabled, who are partially sighted. Can the Noble Lord the Minister assure us that when the consultations go ahead, that those charities working with people in such situations will be consulted, so we can make sure we're offering them the maximum protection on our pavements and on our streets?
I would absolutely recognise the risk to pedestrians from e-scooters, and for that matter e-bikes and ordinary cycles from people who cycle on the footway, and I can assure the Right Reverend Primate that actually we will consider very fully the needs of the disabled and partially sighted and blind people in bringing forward the appropriate legislation. We want people to feel safe walking around our towns, cities and countryside, and riding bikes too fast, riding e-scooters on the pavements is of course completely unsatisfactory for those people.
My Lords.
Conservative benches.
My Lords, thank you. Minister, first of all, thanks for the recent meeting about potential regulation of cyclists in the future. But on the issue of e-bikes, scooters and cyclists, one of the things that none of them have is insurance. And what that means is that they cannot compensate victims. It also means that insurance can play the positive role of modifying human behaviour. The premiums reflect the risk, and so the higher the risk, the higher the premium. Could the Minister explain what is the argument against these people having insurance?
Yeah.
So, the dialogue with the Noble Lord continues. We had a very fruitful meeting, as he said recently, following the earlier debate in the autumn on the whole question of cycling. The practical difficulties of insurance is simply that clearly people don't need a licence for these things, and actually a requirement for insurance would need itself enforcement, on which he's better qualified to opine than I am. And I think there's a real difficulty with some of the propositions about licensing and insurance, which we'll have to fully consider. And he is right, of course, that actually in the absence of insurance, if there is an accident and people are injured or worse with this, then there is a real problem. But we have to crack this in a practical manner.
On average, the London Fire Brigade is called to an e-bike or e-scooter fire once every 2 days, some of these leading to loss of life. My noble friend Lord Redesdale has a private member's bill, the Lithium Battery Safety Bill, designed to tackle the issues of substandard battery design, unsafe battery chargers and dangerous conversion kits. Will the Noble Lord the Minister undertake to examine this bill in detail with the intention of providing government support to get this legislation onto the statute book as soon as possible?
I will certainly undertake to look at that in the way that the Noble Baroness suggests. The the Department for Business and Trade in October launched the Buy Safe, Be Safe campaign to raise awareness about the dangers of buying faulty and unsafe e-bikes, e-scooters and components such as batteries for the very reason she suggests, which is that these fires, some of which are catastrophic and have caused fatal injuries, are completely unacceptable, and the people selling these things ought to be brought to order.
Third oral question. Lord